This morning I saw Raspberry Pi trending for price issues. Somebody posted this on X. Is it a joke with a Raspberry Pi at $426.95? Now, it's not a joke, but that's obviously not the MSRP. Or if it is, maybe it's in some other currency, or if it's some shop offering a third-party thing. The MSRP for the 16 gig is currently $305 US, and you can actually get it for that much from a lot of places because nobody's buying these things. I posted in my 16 gig Pi 5 review, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it launched at $120, and I said that was, the price was a bit out there, and I still agree with that. For $300, $400, definitely do not buy this. There's probably like 10 people or 10 projects on the planet that could actually benefit from that and couldn't just use a cheaper mini PC, especially a used mini PC. But yeah, 16 gig Pi 5s, they've never been a good deal, and now they're just a bad deal. Like, just don't buy them. If you live in the US near a micro center, like I do, then it's a lot easier because you can get a Pi 4 Model B 1 gig for $35, or a Pi 5 1 gig for $43, which, you know, it's $45 normally, but for some reason they give a couple bucks off on these things. The best deal possible right now for any Pi in the 4 or 5 class is the Pi 400, which has a keyboard and all these ports and everything for $50. It's kind of crazy. I don't know why they're selling them so cheap. Maybe they're just not selling well and they're trying to offload these things. Do not buy the Pi 500 Plus. I had a video talking about it and plugging in a GPU to it and stuff. It is such a bad deal right now. It's over $300. There are very few people who should buy this thing. You could do a lot better just buying your own custom keyboard with a mini PC that's faster and has more RAM and more storage and stuff. It's just a terrible deal right now, and I think that Raspberry Pi knows that. The problem is not that Raspberry Pi is like, we're going to gouge people. The problem is that Raspberry Pi's architecture traditionally uses one chip, one DRAM chip for all that memory. So when you need the 16 gigabyte DRAM chip, that little chip, that is like all of the price of a Pi right now. It used to not be the case, but nowadays that is like the entire price of the Pi is going into that little DRAM chip. And that's just something that Raspberry Pi has to deal with. And they've actually introduced a few models that have multiple DRAM chips so that they can save a little bit on that and have two smaller chips, which is cheaper than one giant chip. And a lot of competitors who have other boards, sometimes larger than the Pi, have space for two chips, so they can pay less for the same amount of RAM. So that's always an option. You're not getting the Raspberry Pi ecosystem that way. But you know, a lot of people are going to immediately say, before they even watch this video, you should buy a mini PC. Raspberry Pis have always been a terrible deal. Raspberry Pis are great for certain use cases. They're not great for every use case, but they're great for if you need low power, a small footprint, and an ecosystem with GPIO support and accessories for all these different things. Like, I went around my studio just to see, like, how many of these Pis, you know, I do a lot of experiments with Pis, but I don't usually deploy those experiments. I looked around to see all the different things that I use Pis for in production, like things that have been running for more than a month, sometimes for 5-10 years. And most of my Raspberry Pis are Pi 4s, and most of them are 1 or 2 gig, not 4 or 8 gig. And there are some Pi 5s, but a few of those I could replace with Pi 4s if I needed to. I have like 10 of these things because I've bought them for all these videos over the years, and it's silly to have them sitting in a drawer somewhere. But like, looking at my rack at home, I have my Home Assistant set up. That's on a Compute Module 4, which is still a little bit cheaper than a Compute Module 5. Then I have a Pi 5 running my Frigate NVR and a Pi 5 running SDR for my external weather monitoring thing. I could run that off a Pi 4 no problem. And then below that, I have 3 Pi 4s that are running my home VPN, running a backup server, and running my internet monitoring Pi that also runs Pi-hole for DNS. Then I have this Raspberry Shake running on my concrete floor to monitor earthquakes, and that is running on a Pi 3B, so quite an older Pi, and it's been running fine for years now. And then looking in the studio, in the rack room, I have my NVR that's been running on a Compute Module 4, and that could be on a Pi 4. It's enough grunt to store video on a hard drive and run it through Coral, which I'm using for image detection. Then I have a Pi 5 running in my network rack as a time server, and I need that because I need the PCI Express connector, but that could easily be the 1 gig. I don't even remember what size I have in there. I think I have a 4 gig in there. And then I have a Pi 4 that's running remote access services and Pi-hole for the studio. And then up top I have a Home Assistant that was running a CM4, but then I upgraded it to a CM5 just to see if it was possible. but there's no real reason it has to be a CM5. It's just a little bit faster. Then in my main rack, all the way at the bottom, buried under all the servers, I have another Compute Module 4, which could easily be a Pi 4 that's running NUT just to monitor my UPS. Out here in the main area, I have a PTP wall clock that's running on a Pi 4. And then up front, I have a couple Pis. One is running a NAS that is actually, I'm using SSDs, which are outlandishly expensive now. They were expensive when I built this thing, but now it's like there's no way I would recommend anybody build the same exact NAS until prices come down, because it's just insane. Then I have a Raspberry Pi 5 that could easily be a Pi 4 running Netatalk for all my Apple Talk services in the network here. I have some other Pis, and sometimes I grab either the Pi 500, Pi 500 Plus, or Pi 400 if I need a quick terminal PC that I plug in somewhere. But I could do almost everything that I need to do on Pi 4s. There's only a couple of these that have to be Pi 5s because they use PCI Express. And really, those things could run on a mini PC, but it's nice to have that small footprint. The point of all this is to say, you don't need a Pi 5 16 gig. If you do, tell me, put in the comments what you're using that for, because I can't imagine anyone that absolutely needs that particular Pi model. When people are going out there and quoting wow, Pis are so expensive, it's kind of like going to a Lamborghini store and saying cars are so expensive. No, Lamborghinis are expensive. The high-end stuff, it's insane right now. The reason why I still stick with Pis for a lot of my projects, and now I'm using 1 or 2 gig models, is because the ecosystem around them is still so nice. They just introduced a touch display, which I'm working on a project for it right now, and it's $80. The annoying thing about it is it only works with Pi 5 or Compute Module 4 or 5. It doesn't work with a Pi 4, so that's a little bit annoying. But still, you can get a Pi 5 for $45 or less, at least here in the US. Sadly, if you're in another country, I can't guarantee that you're going to have the same experience as me. But yeah, if you see these things online, it's rage baiting, yes, things are expensive. I can't really blame Raspberry Pi for the DRAM issues that we have right now. Every company is raising prices, and this is something that I said on my main channel and I said on this channel, things are not great because AI is taking over all the chip manufacturing and all the things. Someone asked me about the Pi 02W. It sounds like Raspberry Pi's had trouble getting their chips made because they need to make those special stacked wafers that it seems like the production capacity for that might not be as great as they hoped it would. And now you can't get Pi 02Ws either. And I don't know when that's going to let up. But there are still Pis out there to be had. And for any project that needs a Raspberry Pi, where you need GPIO, you need power consumption savings, you need a small footprint, those projects still work just fine with the Pis that are out there. Just don't buy the Pi 5 16 gig.